Yuck, a rat's been swimming in it. I'm no cook.
Funny enough, he's at
I'm no cook.
So what is this apron that we're meant to have?
All I can see is water. I hate fruit cocktail. The barkeep would be mad if I left work early.
Have you brought me any more ingredients?
I have his toupee.
Not quite a part of his head, but maybe I can get some scalp fragments from it. Have you brought me any other ingredients?
I'll bring you more later.
Good. Now go.
Oh, no you don't. It's not a toy.
I don't think he'd like that.
Yeah?
I'd like to look around a bit.
Sure thing. Hey, don't touch that!
Oh, shoot. I bet my mom would help me find it if she were alive. For crying out loud.
I can't reach it.
I hope it didn't roll onto the floor.
I can't reach it.
I can't believe somebody would steal it.
That doesn't seem to work. That doesn't seem to work. Something of the thread, something of the head, something of the body, and something of the dead. It doesn't seem to stay closed. It's empty. That doesn't seem to work. Yuck, a rat's been swimming in it. I've never been much for rodent seasonings. That wouldn't taste very good. My scoutmaster would kill me if he saw me use a knife like that. That doesn't seem to work. It's too soggy. That doesn't seem to work. The barkeep would be mad if I left work early. That wouldn't be wise.
What is it this time, Fly Brunch?
How come you have to perform on that ledge?
To show the precarious nature of the situation. So to speak.
Right, right.
Yeah, sounds like a crock of monkey snot to me.
All right, you got us. We're really up here because...
Well, we're afraid to come down.
What?
What's the word for it, Frank?
Stupidity?
It's the opposite of acrophobia. Something like... orcophobia.
Sounds more like workophobia to me.
Say what you will, we're not coming down.
See you later.
We can scarcely contain our anticipation.
Okay, here is the big...
Stan's Casual Crosses, for graves that don't need to dress up. The Quagmires, no trespassing. Stan's Cozy Crypts, a place to spend eternity, not a fortune. The Rickets, no trespassing. Warning, quarantine tomb, inhabitants died of green tongue fever. The Grouts, no trespassing. It looks like it's been sealed shut. Here lie the Gordo brothers, too big for any ship. Let's hope the Earth can hold them.
This time I might actually have to just check the walkthrough. I'll see.
Hey, leave that alone.
Sorry, is this your bucket?
Well, no.
So you won't mind if I take it?
I guess not.
Can't believe I didn't try that one last time.
Wow, a whole bucket of mud. And it's mine! All mine! Oops, I think I broke the sign. can't dig that, Daddy. I can't dig that, Daddy. This is creepy feeling.
I'd swear on my grandfather's grave, something weird is going on.
Oh god, I forgot about the graveyard.
This is like the greatest scene ever.
Why are the bats making different sounds here?
Okay, so why?
This is another thing we fought over. I thought the pants thing, I didn't think that was funny.
I think the pants
And you thought it was the best thing in the whole game.
I did. And I still do. I actually use this as an example sometimes when I'm talking
you used to think was.
I do remember doing this in the past, so these ones I can...
I think I hear Largo coming.
Hey, what the hell? What's going on? Whoever did this is gonna pay. I can't get this thing off my head. When I get this thing off my head, somebody's gonna be real sorry.
Maybe I shouldn't have done that. He looked pretty steamed. Gross. Something of the thread, something of the head, something of the body, and something of the dead.
Sorry, just looking over it to remind myself.
I'd go for help, but I'm afraid to walk around like this.
It's empty. I don't like to get naked in other men's rooms. I'd better not touch them. It looks like somebody's trying to grow penicillin. I'd better not touch them. It looks like somebody's trying to grow penicillin.
You're making me mad, Marty!
That's my name, don't wear it out.
Look, I want it free and I want it tonight!
Party tonight? Sure, I'll come.
I'm talking about getting my laundry!
Don't worry about me. I've been dry for 3 years.
I said I need it back tonight.
What? Yeah, we'll stay out all night.
This is useless. You tell him I'll be back to pick it up. Or else.
That's what I was waiting for the whole time. Forgot to activate it.
I'd like to pick up some clothes.
You have your claim ticket, Sonny.
Got it right here.
Great. I'll see what we have ready for Mr. Legrand. I know it's here somewhere. I saw it a while ago. Now, where was it? Ah, here it comes.
Nice April fresh scent.
Doesn't look right.
Oops, I thought I wanted to talk to you, but I don't.
you brought me any more ingredients?
I have the bone of his grandfather.
Perfect. Do you have the final ingredient?
I have this pearly white bra.
Yes, that will work. At last! Now I can make a voodoo doll to be reckoned with. Let me get my juju bag. And now for the ingredients. A dandruff flake from Largo's head. A single piece of Largo's thread. A drop of fluid from his body. A single chip off the bone of the dead. And finally, some miscellaneous voodoo herbs and seasonings, including monosodium glutamate. This ought to be good. 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we assassinate? Largo, yeah.
Sorry,
Hey,
just clicked
that
outside.
looks just like
My
him.
mistake.
Thanks, voodoo lady.
One more thing. Some of the ingredients were not the optimum specimens. It should still work, but it will have a limited range. You will have to get close to Largo. Very close.
I think Largo's out of voodoo range.
Hey, what are you doing in here? Get out of my room and stay out.
I think Largo's out of voodoo range.
You're invading my privacy.
He's short, but he's mean.
I can't believe you're in here again. Oh!
Take that, you stumpy little dim-witted toad!
What? Who do you think you are?
I'm Guybrush Threepwood. People don't always recognize me. That's why I carry this!
I'm gonna tear you limb from limb. How are you doing that?
Largo Legrand, you are a no-good, vicious, two-bit thug. I command you to give me back my money and leave this island.
Ha! I already spent all your money.
Oh, well, I command you to leave this island.
Just you try and make... Yeah! Ooh! Oh!
That'll teach you to mess with the slayer of the ghost pirate LeChuck.
What's that? You killed LeChuck?
As a matter of fact, I did. Quite an interesting story, actually.
The fortune teller said she did it, LeChuck.
She did she? Does she have one of these?
Is that...
Yes, LeChuck's beard. Still alive and wriggling.
Let me see that. Boy, it is alive. We've been looking for a living piece of LeChuck for years. Now we can bring it back to life. Look out, world! The most fearsome pirate of all time will soon sail the seas again.
Whoops.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I'm afraid it's true, Guybrush. If they have any animated tissue, they can reanimate his whole body.
But I blew his body into a zillion gooey pieces.
Not his body, Guybrush. You destroyed his spirit form. His body was safely buried far away.
But by now it must be...
Rotten? Partially decomposed? Yes. And I don't think that's going to make him any more pleasant to deal with.
He's gonna be looking for me.
Yes.
He's gonna try to kill me.
Undoubtedly.
Can you give me something to protect me?
He has magic just as strong as mine. Nothing I could give you would protect you. But there is a way out.
What is it?
You're doing it right now.
Fiddling with the change in my pocket?
Hunting for Big Whoop.
Oh yeah, I was doing that, wasn't I?
Big Whoop isn't just a treasure. It contains the secret to another world. Find that world, and you'll be able to escape LeChuck forever.
But I know so little about Big Whoop.
Take this book.
Big Whoop, Unclaimed Bonanza or Myth. And where'd you get this?
I checked it out at the Fat City Library. I foresaw your need.
Gee, thanks.
I used your name when I checked it out, so be sure and return it when you're through reading. The overdue fines in Fat City are pretty steep.
Gee, thanks.
Yeah?
Largo the Grand will never bother you again.
Yeah. I heard Marty stuck a bunch of pins in his underwear or something. Drove him right out of town.
No, it was me.
You? What were you doing with Largo's underwear?
Well, no, never mind. I'd like to look around a bit.
Sure thing.
I'm stuck here forever.
Hi, Wally.
Who's there? I can't see anything without my monocle.
Hey, I did it! Largo the Grand left scab.
That's great. I guess I can stop with the bricks through his window now. I'm gonna starve to death in here.
It's me again.
So I see. What can I do for you this time, man?
Tell me more about that necklace thingy you lost.
It happened some time ago. My navigator and I set sail for this legendary island. When we arrived, we were taken prisoner by cannibals. I escaped, man. But my navigator was not so lucky. All I found of him was one of his eyeballs. And I've kept it as a good luck charm.
Gee, I think I've met your friend.
Unlikely.
I gotta run. Lots of treasure hunting to do.
Okay. Bye, man. Come again.
He's back.
Well, you guys can stop worrying about Largo. He's history.
Oh, really? He must have finally got that nasty letter I wrote.
You sure can write a mean letter, Fink.
Any marshmallows left?
Marshmallows? We don't have any marshmallows.
What's that white puffy thing on the end of your stick?
It's the stuffing for under my eye patch.
We're just sterilizing it.
We're pirates, Guybrush, not Girl Scouts.
Any idea where I could hire a ship?
You'll need to go to the far side of the island, and there you'll meet a man named Captain Dread.
Yikes. Sounds intimidating.
Not really, once you get to know him.
Well, I'll see you salty dogs later. This door appears to be locked. Big whoop. Unclaimed bonanza or myth? This is fascinating. It says here there were 4 pirates. Rapscallion, the cook. Young Lindy, the cabin boy. Mr. Rogers, the first mate. And Captain... Good heavens! Captain Marley! Wonder if there's any relation. They buried their treasure along with plenty of... booby traps on a place believed to be called Inky Island. They made a map which they divided into 4 pieces, each man taking one. Rapscallion later opened the Steam and Weenie Hut on Scab Island. It was a huge success, but fell into disrepair after Rap was killed in a flash fire. Young Lindy drifted aimlessly, down on his luck until he mysteriously came into money while panhandling on Booty Island. He used the cash to bankroll an advertising firm which failed after its gross mishandling of the Gangrene and Honey account. Mr. Rogers retired off the coast of Fat Island. He marketed homemade contest grog brewed in a bathtub until his recent disappearance. Captain Marley vanished while sailing in the America's Cup race. His boat was leading at the time. Looks closed. Can't dig that, Daddy. I think Largo's out of voodoo range by now. That wouldn't taste very good. The barkeep would be mad if I left work early.
You're supposed to be cooking.
I took my break. It's the law.
Nice try, but not good enough. You're fired.
Yoo-hoo. Hey. Yo. Yo. Hey. Yoo-hoo. Yo. They're sleeping peacefully. Would you like this?
No thanks, man.
Would you like my monocle?
Thanks, man. This'll do just fine for me lucky sailing necklace. What can I do for ya?
I need to charter a ship.
You're in luck, my friend. Rumor has it that Largo's been run off the island, so I'm now free to sail again. Only problem is that you don't look like the type that has 20 pieces of 8.
Actually, I do have that much.
Well, man, consider me ship chartered.
Great. Where's your ship?
You're standing in it, man.
Yikes.
Deep in the Caribbean, hidden by an endless storm, lies LeChuck's fortress.
So, when are we gonna resurrect the old bloated fool? Oops.
I'll ignore that comment just this one time, Largo. Only because they tell me you found Guybrush Threepwood.
It's Threepwood, and I found him on Scab Island.
Very good. No one gets the upper hand on LeChuck without getting what he deserves. I want Guybrush brought to me, and I want him brought alive. I am entrusting this to you. Do not fail me.
Never, your voodoo lordship.
Aye. Guybrush Threepwood is finished. I need you to start building me a very special doll.
With pleasure.
I'm off to find Big Whoop. It's empty.
Welcome to the Jolly Rasta. Where do you want to go?
I don't know. What are my choices?
I only know how to get to 3 islands, man.
What are they?
There's where we just came from, Scab Island, the only island where pirates are free to be pirates. Then there's Booty Island, the festive French Mardi Gras party all the time island. It's run by one of the most respected and loved governors around, Governor Elaine Marley.
Elaine?
And last, there is Fat Island, a fascist dictatorship run by an over-bloated pig named Governor Fat. Here, take this easy-to-read reference map, courtesy of Dread Tours. You can use it to show me where you want to go.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
Aren't you Guybrush Threepwood?
Who wants to know?
I'm with the local constabulary, sir. You'd better come with me. Governor Fat would like a word with you.
I'm really very busy. Could we do this another time? Coming.
Well, Mr. Oh, excuse me. Well, Mr. Threepwood, I can't tell you how pleased I am to have you here as my guest.
Oh? Why is that?
I thought we might talk about a few things.
Such as how much it must cost to keep you in food?
Be careful upon whose toes you tread, Mr. Threepwood.
At least I can see your toes.
Why, you... Excuse me. Let's get down to why you're here, shall we? I intend to sell you to the ghost pirate LeChuck.
LeChuck's dead. I killed him.
Perhaps you didn't kill him quite so thoroughly as you imagine. He looked perfectly healthy the last time I saw him.
Last time you saw him? Oh no, LeChuck's back.
I beg your pardon, did you say something?
He doesn't scare me. Just tell me where I can find him.
I rather think he'll find you, Mr. Threepwood. You see, he's put a sizable bounty on your head.
Oh?
A bounty I intend to collect.
Oh. I guess that bounty would buy a lot of bacon grease and pure fat, huh?
Why, you can figure it out while you wait in jail for LeChuck to pick you up. Take him away.
Yes, sir, Governor Fat. Come on, you little weasel.
I'll be back.
Come on. Don't try to escape or anything. Walt will chew you to bits. Okay, Walt. I'll be back to relieve you at 11.
I can't reach it. It's a tibia. The door's locked. I hope I don't have to sleep here. That doesn't seem to work. It's already pulled back. I don't want to. Watch me flip it right into my pocket. They don't call me the Bone Master for nothing. It's a tibia. Here, doggy doggy. Here, boy. A fine example of dieting gone horribly wrong. Mr. Guybrush Threepwood, arrested for infractions too numerous to list. Mr. Willy Gorilla, arrested for grinding his organ in public. If I could read, I'd spend all my free time at the Fat City Library. Reginald Blackbeard. Wanted, Guybrush Threepwood. Hey, that's me! For the murder of G.P. LeChuck. Also for the use of witchcraft on the person of Largo Legrand. The thievery of clothing and medically prescribed hair supplements for such witchcraft. Grave robbing. Trespassing. Larceny without a permit. Exceeding allowable FDA limit for rodent parts in Vichyssoise. Unauthorized exiting from a penal institution. And releasing a dangerous reptile in a populated area. Also wanted for questioning regarding the disappearance of prescription eyewear. Reward offered for information leading to the suspect's apprehension. Threepwood is to be considered armed and dangerous. Armed and dangerous? Right on. It's stuck to the wall.
Hey, aren't you supposed to be in jail?
You must be confusing me with my cousin, Guybrush.
Oh, I see. The resemblance is uncanny.
Can I go upstairs?
I'm sorry, but the governor doesn't want to be disturbed while he's eating.
When will the governor be finished eating? I think there's a fire in the kitchen.
Really? I'd better check it out.
No, you can't have a bite. It's mine. Get your own, mother.
I think I almost woke him up. There's food or something stuck in the drain. It seems to go off before stuff comes out of the tube. Sleeping like a baby elephant. I don't think this has been washed in about 10 years. There are crumbs and condiments all over it. Ugh. Ugh.
No, you can't have a bite. It's mine. Get your own, mother.
The cover says, famous pirate quotations. That doesn't seem to work. That doesn't seem to work. Nice! I can't reach it. Very picturesque. What's this doing in a pirate game?
I remember when you had that squirt bottle by your desk, and when people would come in and they would talk to you for too long, you would squirt them. Nice. I'll knock.
What do you want, kid?
Who are you and what are you doing back there?
I'm Bruno, and that's none of your business. Get lost. You again?
Have you ever heard the legend of the mighty Guybrush? Well, don't you want to hear it again? I've had it with this card catalog. There's a model lighthouse lens inside.
Shh!
Uh-oh. It's stuck. I think I broke it.
This is a library.
There's so many books here. I'll never be able to find anything.
Please be quiet.
Excuse me.
Shh! This is a library. Whisper! Now, what is it?
I'm looking for a book.
Do you have a library card?
No. How do I get one?
I'll need some personal information. Name?
Herman Toothrot.
Address?
$1060 West Addison.
Age?
Um, 21.
Occupation?
Freelance.
Vices?
Jaywalking.
I see. All right. Your library card will be mailed to the address you gave me. In the meantime, take this temporary card. You may check books out of the library, but only 4 at a time.
That's about as many titles as I can remember anyhow.
What book are you looking for?
I don't know. What have you got?
You expect me to name every book in the library? Use the card catalog like a normal person.
The time I blew up LeChuck. I'll have to remember that.
No more bets? Okay, here we go. Red.
All right!
You're a winner, sir. Which prize would you like?
What you got left?
We have money, an invitation to Governor Marley's Mardi Gras party, and a 3-day vacation on fabulous Hook Island.
I'd like the money.
The money it is. Care to make a bet? Easy money.
Hello.
How you doing?
Could you explain how this game works?
Sure, it's easy. Just tell me what number you want, and I'll spin the wheel. If your number comes up, you win.
Sounds simple. What numbers can I bet on?
1 to 32, red or black.
I'd like to place a bet.
Betting costs money, kid. 1 piece of 8 for 1 game.
Oh, yeah. Here.
Okay, kid. Which number you want?
I'd like 21 black.
Okay, here we go. Red. Too bad. Better luck next time.
Well, thanks anyway. I hate losing.
Excuse me, pal. I want to make another bet. 29 black.
29 black it is. $29 black.
All right!
You win again. Today is your lucky day, all right. Would you like money again?
Yeah.
Easy money.
Give me the next number.
First, give me the password. If this is 5, what's this?
3.
Right. The winning number will be 8 red.
Thanks.
What do you want, kid?
What's the next winning number gonna be?
First, give me the password. You have to get it right 3 times. If this is 3, what's this?
1?
Okay, that's 1 right. 2 more. If this is 1, what's this?
5?
That's 2. 1 more. If this is 5, what's this?
2?
Okay, you must be a member of the Gamblers Club. But I don't recognize you.
What? You don't remember me?
No, but that's okay. You wouldn't have gotten the password right if you weren't a member. The winning number will be 22 black.
No more bets? Okay, here we go. $8 red.
All right!
You win again. Today is your lucky day, all right. Would you like money again?
Yeah. I think that's enough for me today.
Okay, Ralphie. See you tomorrow. Big prizes for just 1 piece of 8.
I'd like to place another bet. Here's 1 piece of 8.
Okay, kid. Which number you want?
I'd like 22 black.
Okay, here we go. $22 black. You're a winner, kid. Which of our fabulous prizes do you want? Take your pick. You can have 60 pieces of 8, or you can have the invitation to Governor Marley's Mardi Gras party, or you can have a 3-day vacation on fabulous Hook Island. Well, which will it be?
I'd love to have the invitation.
He wants the invitation. Congratulations!
Thanks.
Place your bets, please.
You are cordially invited to Governor Marley's Mardi Gras blowout. Don't forget to bring this invitation when you pick up your complimentary costume. Please present invitation at door and wear your costume. Herman Toothrot, 1060 West Addison, age 21, freelance.
Care to make another bet?
Everything looks all blurry. Pardon me, miss.
What do you want this time?
I'm looking for a book.
What book are you looking for?
Do you have The Time I Blew Up LeChuck?
Okay, here you go. Anything else?
I won't be needing any more books just now.
Remember, books are the treasure of the mind.
Great shipwrecks of our century. I'll have to remember that. I think I'll try a different drawer. The Joy of Hex. I'll have to remember that. I've had it with this card catalog. Pardon me, miss.
What do you want this time?
I'm looking for a book.
What book are you looking for?
Could you find The Joy of Hex?
Here you go. Anything else?
Do you have great shipwrecks of our century?
Okay, here you go. That's your limit. You'll have to give some books back before you can check out any more.
Famous pirate quotations. Happiness is a warm manatee. Commander Buttonhead. Kiss me, I've got scurvy. Barney Gout. Darg! Old Skunk Eye. Violets are blue, roses are red. We're coming aboard. Prepare to eat lead. Rapscallion. Mouthwash. We don't need no stinking mouthwash. Fester Leech.
Do you remember how we designed the puzzles for this on the whiteboard, and we purposely did the thing that we later thought made it too hard, but we put every island on the top and every puzzle chain on the side, and then we made sure that there was an object on every island that you needed for every puzzle chain, so that if you wanted to solve any like long puzzle chain, you had to visit every single island.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, when you actually play this game, you have to go from island to island to island over and over and over again.
I remember discussions talking about, was that too annoying for players to constantly going from island to island to island to solve things?
And you said, I don't care. I said 40 hours. It's going to be 40 hours.
Those bastards. Oh, I guess I should go to another one anyway.
Where'd you want to go?
Please take me to Booty Island.
What happened to the map I gave you? We'll never find the island without it.
I'll go back and get it. Mr. Guybrush Threepwood, arrested for infractions too numerous to list. Hey, that tickles!
Bet you want to go.
There's a banana in here and an organ. I don't know how to play. Excuse me. I'd like to rent a costume.
Our costumes are all gone, or on reserve. Sorry.
But you have tons of costumes.
They're all reserved and waiting to be picked up.
Why are your costumes so popular?
I'm the only costume shop in a 5-island radius. And besides, everybody who's anybody is going to the big Mardi Gras celebration at Governor Marley's mansion.
I'd really like to rent a costume.
Try us after Mardi Gras.
I'd really, really like to rent a costume.
Look, if you don't have a reservation, you don't have a costume.
You look busy. I'll come back later.
Sightseeing. Sunken galleons.
I'm searching for the treasure of Big Whoop.
Yeah? When I was the first mate on the Limping Limpet, we went in search of Big Whoop. We'd heard it was buried under a place called Blinky Island. Never found the island or the treasure. The captain eventually died of boredom while we were crossing the sea of beige flotsam. I hope your luck is better.
Could I have one of those leaflets?
Yeah, okay. Like to charter a ship? I do weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs, you name it.
Hi, my name's Guybrush.
I'm Captain Kate Capsize.
I'm interested in chartering a ship.
Great. Not many people want to charter a glass-bottom boat around here. Pretty soon I'm off to Fat Island to try my luck there. But let's talk turkey first. My fee is 6,000 pieces of 8.
Don't you think 6,000 pieces of 8 is a bit high?
No, I don't.
Do you give credit? I don't have that much.
I guess you'd better find some more then, huh? Sunken galleons. Cruises. See the world. Cruises.
Howdy! Welcome to Stan's previously owned coffins. We handle the dead for a lot less bread. What are you looking for,
Stan? Look, we took the costume from the original game and painted it black.
Yeah.
Same animation.
It's that cost savings we had to do.
Just look at all this quality
The pattern that moves with the coat was like something that we did on the 2D games to save ourselves a lot of effort, but as soon as they started making them in 3D, then it became really hard.
Right.
Either way, you came to the right place.
Didn't you used to be a used ship salesman?
Well, yeah. But I decided to get into a business where unsatisfied customers are less likely to come back and complain.
Hey Pluto, how you going, man? This is Monkey Island 2. And let me put it back to the better graphics. It's an old retro game.
I gotta go. See you later.
Here,
So,
take
yeah,
this
old school as fuck,
complimentary
but
hanky. Just
one
my
of my
way of
favourites.
saying, I care.
Sightseeing. See the world.
The old click and point adventures. Yeah, pretty good. Self-do.
Okay, now, who's gonna be next? It's a great day for spitting. Just look at this juicy crowd. Step up to the line and test your swill.
So, the
Valuable
spitting part
prizes.
coming up, for example.
Even a child can do it. In fact,
stay still long
they do it
enough.
very well. Come on! It's all paid for by Booty Island Parks and Rec.
I'll give it a try.
A volunteer! All right, settle down, folks. This kid looks like a serious contender. What's your name, boy?
Yeah, I did an hour before, and now it's another hour and a half now. So 2.5 at the moment on the game.
I am,
Yeah.
of course, Captain Loogie.
The Lukester, Lugorama, hawking the big ones for fame and fortune. Spit away!
Come on, Captain Loogie.
Let's go!
Spit!
Come on!
Misfire,
there's a
misfire!
combination to this.
Everybody run! Gee, that's too bad, Captain. Let's give him a big hand anyway, folks. At least he tried. Just put your two lips together and blow.
try
Are
it
you
one more time.
pirates or not?
Oh, me!
Captain Loogie is in the house. Spit away!
Come on!
Let her rip!
Woo! You can do it!
Hey, he's
Yeah,
been
that's
working
better.
out. That doesn't quite qualify.
But
I think that deserves a little applause. Too bad there are only prizes for first place. Better luck next time.
One more go.
Now, how about the rest of you? 2, 4, 6, 8.
Reminds me of an old Beavis and Butthead game where you used to spit off the top of the
Captain
building.
Loogie is in the house. Spit away!
You can do it, man.
Woo! You can do it!
you can do it!
At least he's consistent. That doesn't quite qualify. Now,
look on the
how
other
about
guys.
the rest of you? Everybody already has the necessary equipment. Turn a disgusting habit into a prestige-winning skill. Captain Loogie is in the house. Spit away!
Better not blow it, man.
Hey, spitter, 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 spitter. Hey, spitter, spitter, spitter.
Hey, spitter, spitter, spitter. You stink.
At least he's consistent. That doesn't quite qualify. Now, how about the rest of you? Don't let this grass wither up and die. What
Yeah,
was
this
that?
is
Did I hear
the fun
somebody
that old games
swallow?
used to have for the sake of it.
Cruises. Cruises.
What do we got?
Sunken
map.
galleons. Check it out.
Capsized charters. Glass-bottom boat for sightseeing or special interest voyages.
Hello there.
Sorry, son. Didn't have my horn out. Could you say that again?
Yeah, in the old days, you used to literally spend fucking hours and hours just trying to figure out one part of the game.
Hey, old man, how about blowing off the cannon?
How about just blowing off? My name is Augustus DeWatt, not old man. And this cannon is for official purposes only.
Yeah, I'll probably still be on Pluto. All good, man. And I'm back.
Looks like a plank stuck in a hole in a tree. Looks like a plank stuck in a hole in a tree. Big woodpeckers. Big woodpeckers. How rustic. No thanks. Only shiny pages left in the catalog.
The ghost pirate LeChuck!
Get a grip! Don't you know a Mardi Gras costume when you see one? Is there something I can help you with?
What are you guarding here?
I'm guarding Governor Marley's mansion.
Elaine Marley? From Melee Island?
Yep, the same heroic Elaine Marley who killed the ghost pirate LeChuck.
But I killed LeChuck.
Why would Governor Marley lie?
For attention?
In your dreams.
I'm here for the governor's party.
You mean Governor Marley's Mardi Gras fish fry? It's invitation only and costumes are required.
This is my costume.
Nobody would willingly wear such a dopey costume.
Gotta go. Keep up the good work. Nice shop you got here.
Thanks! I pride myself on the quality of my merchandise. I only sell the finest of pirate memorabilia. Even the trade-ins are first class. And I always make you the best deals.
How can you afford to do that?
Volume!
I have to go now. I'd like to buy this map piece.
That's 6 million pieces of 8. Do you want it?
I can't afford that much.
Too bad.
I'd like to buy this ship's horn.
And I'd like to sell it to you. That'll be 40 pieces of 8.
Okay, I'll take it.
Let me get you one from Overstock. Here you go.
Thank you. I'd like to buy this well-polished old saw.
Okie dokie. That'll be 25 pieces of 8.
Okay, I'll take it. Thank you.
exit where it is.
I'd like to buy this sign.
Sorry, that sign's not for sale.
Oh.
Well, I guess I could sell it. That'll be 5 pieces of 8.
Okay, I'll take it. Thank you. It's empty.
It's said that the infamous Greenbeard won that barrel from Long John Cooper in a poker game. Shame that it's empty.
It's firmly attached to the wall. I'd like to buy this small picture frame.
Yeah, I like that too, but it's not for sale.
I'd like to buy this mirror.
I see you have an eye for quality. That'll be 15 pieces of 8.
Okay, I'll take it. Thank you.
Ah, you have a costume on reserve. Well, that's a different story. Let's see. Your costume is right over here. Walk this way, please. Well, here it is. You'll surely be the talk of the party in this. Well, have fun and enjoy your costume.
That's funny. That's his costume, eh?
Nice costume.
Purple tentacle.
I should check with the shopkeeper first.
Good old game as well. Day of the Tentacle.
Check it out. Check it out.
Actually, I might Google that one.
Sunken galleons. Sight. Sightseeing. Last day before I leave for Fat Island.
Sorry, just adding those to the
Sunken
list.
galleons.
Is there something I can help you with?
You mentioned a party before?
Did you bring a costume and invitation?
I've got my invitation right here.
Well, what do you know? You do have an invitation. Do you have a costume?
I have my costume right here.
Better put it on.
Well, if you insist, but you'll have to try to restrain yourself.
No, not here. Go in the bushes or something. Jeez. Oh, that is nice. And the boots are a nice touch. Okay, I guess you can go through. Have fun.
Oh, what a cute little thing.
Leave me alone. I'm busy.
I gotta sweat off 20 pounds in this stupid costume.
Too late. They're already picked clean.
To Elaine Marley!
To Elaine!
To this great party!
Nice map.
All right. I got the first map piece.
Thanks.
More subtle than most.
Yeah, thanks.
Not your usual larger-than-life.
No kidding. I forgot to put air holes in mine.
So, where are all the chicks?
I can't get by these people on the stairs. I'm not dressed for wrestling.
Yeah, I thought there'd be some here. And again, in these costumes, who can tell? That's true. There might be some babes here. Well, what can we do about it? Well, we just ask.
Can I see both of your IDs, please?
Ask? What are you, nuts? Yeah, I guess you're right.
To the salmon pate!
Nope.
To Mardi Gras!
What's the matter, boy? Smell something? Nice doggy.
What's the matter there, Guybrush?
How did you know my name?
I was talking to the dog. Who are you?
I'm Governor Marley's ex-boyfriend. She's expecting me.
Sure, lover boy. I'll just take you right up to see her. But first, don't you empty your pockets.
Try and catch me, old man.
Oh, look out for that rake. Governor, I caught one of your party guests making off with your grandfather's map.
Another would-be treasure hunter, eh? Bring him in.
In here, Guybrush.
Guybrush? Guybrush Threepwood?
The one and only Sugar Bear.
Of all the parties and all the houses on all the islands of the Caribbean, he had to crash mine.
It's destiny, honey cakes.
Don't talk to me.
Snugglepuss.
Get lost.
Punky Doodle.
I'm warning you.
Pooper Duper.
Maybe I should go rake the back 40.
Look at us, together again. Boy, we haven't been like this since, well...
Since I quit my job and moved away without leaving a forwarding address?
Was that what happened? Gee, I thought...
Guybrush, can't you take a hint? We were a mistake. I thought we had an agreement.
I like what you've done with your hair.
Same old Guybrush.
I realize now what a fool I've been.
Oh, really?
You're the governor of my heart, baby.
Can't you take a hint?
Still ignoring fashion, huh? Good for you.
So much for a pleasant attitude.
You know, kind of liked your old house better.
I see you're charming as ever.
May lightning strike me if I bear false intentions.
I guess that's supposed to make up for everything.
Is it my imagination, or have you gained weight?
And here I thought you were becoming a decent guy.
Maybe we should talk about this.
Sorry, Threep. I don't play those games anymore.
Is that a new blouse?
Uh-huh.
Fine. Be that way. There are other fish in the sea.
Yeah, but even fish have standards.
Mardi Gras sure is tough on us swimmers. I'll drink with that.
No thanks. They reek of fish. No way. It probably smells.
Hey, what is all the racket? Don't mess with the governor's cans! Huh. You again? Who do you think you are? You better just get out of here! No good, punk. If it's not raccoons, it's teenage vandals. Hey, come back here! I'm not done yet! You heard me? Get lost, transient hooligan! Why, I ought to... Oh, there you are. Anyway, like I was saying, you've got some nerve. I don't have time for this. Punk.
Maybe while I'm in the woods, I'll ditch this stupid costume. Looks like a plank stuck in a hole in a tree.
Noted, yeah.
Maybe I wasn't clear enough the last time.
Fine. Be that way. There are other fish in the sea.
Good riddance. Boy, you really can't take a hint.
If I can't be with you, I don't want to live.
Nice try, but I think you're too late.
I'm waiting for your apology.
Oh, it's going to be that way, is it?
You were right. I was a buffoon. And a weenie.
Decided to act civilized for a change, eh?
I'm not sure, but don't you owe me some money?
There goes any hope for a pleasant conversation.
I stopped doing that knuckle-cracking thing.
Yeah, right.
My life's been meaningless without you.
Oh, so now you're a good guy.
Elaine, take me back. I can't live without you.
Oh, Guybrush, I know I shouldn't have anything to do with you, but there's something about your weakness and ineptitude that I find infectious.
Does that mean you're gonna let me have the map?
The map. Is that what this is all about? I should have known better. If the map's all you care about... You'd better go out and get it.
Try the fish? Hear the one about the polar bear with the hair lip?
What the? Hey! Hey! Well, shoot.
You know, how's work?
She's gone. I guess I really made her mad this time. Well, maybe she won't miss this old thing. I'm warm enough in the one I have on. It's just a porcelain replica of the chest. I hate that knick-knacky junk. I better not muss up Elaine's sheets. Comfy.
Like the music? Where'd you get the costume?
Ha! Bark as loud as you want. Filbert's out raking the back 40.
Alright, back. I do remember some of this stuff, somehow, but I've had to check one major thing so far in a walkthrough, which was the necklace replacement for Captain Dread's. So, where to go from here? Something goes in the
That doesn't seem to work. That doesn't seem to work.
Don't want to use the shovel. Okay.
Looks like a plank stuck in a hole in a tree.
Okay. That's different.
Ouch! That really hurts.
Not game over yet.
Ooh,
Thank fuck.
wait a minute. Something very strange is going on here. Do not attempt to adjust your set. Dad? Mom? What are you two doing here?
We came looking for you.
Where have you been?
You came looking for me? But I thought you abandoned me.
Why would we do that? We are such loving parents.
Yes, we are.
So what do you two want?
We have some information for you, son.
Really? Great! What is it?
Well, we're going to give it to you in the form of a song.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this is weird. I'm just gonna check the old graphics for the sake of it. Yeah, this shit's trippy. That's for sure. I think it's even freakier than the old graphics, actually.
Connected to the leg bones. The leg bones connected to the hip bones. Hip bones connected to the head bones.
Ah, you're good.
The head bones connected to the rib bones. Rib bones connected to the leg bones. Leg bones connected to the arm bones.
I gotta write this down.
The arm bones connected to the head bones. The head bones connected to the rib bones. The rib bones connected to the hip bones.
Rib bone connected to the hip bone.
Yikes!
What is it? What's wrong? Why did you leave me again? Ooh! LeChuck! But I killed you!
You didn't kill me, you little moron! I was already a ghost when you met me. You just destroyed my spiritual essence. A favor that I will now return.
Wow! What a dream!
Where you want to go?
Gee, I guess it was an antique. Excuse me, could you take a look at this?
Looks like a massive fracture. You're gonna be using this? I better reinforce it for you. Here you go, boy. Steel shank, alloy splints, better than new.
I think I'd better make myself scarce instead.
Aye! My leg! Help! Someone get a doctor!
He's cute. It's a metronome. No thanks. Too many bad memories of piano lessons.
Hey, don't bug the monkey. Hey, what'd you do to my piano player? Go ahead and take my entertainment. Thanks for nothing,
shove
buddy.
a fucking monk in my pocket. Jojo.
Excuse me.
Yeah, boy?
Largo Legrand has left Scab Island for good.
Well, I guess all those laxatives I was slipping into his drinks finally got to him.
What?
Don't worry, I don't put them in all the drinks.
Grog, please.
I'll need to see some ID for that.
Will you accept a temporary library card?
Let me see it. Freelance? Is that anything like a sanitary engineer?
No, not quite.
Well, all right. Can I get you that drink now?
Yeah, I could really use it.
Name your poison.
What do you got?
Well, we have some specialty drinks here at the Bloody Lip, like Yellowbeard's Baby, Bloody Stump, and Blue Whale.
I'll have Yellowbeard's Baby.
Well, you can try, but I don't think nature's on your side.
Just give me the drink, please.
Hey, I have to crack jokes. It's a union thing. That'll be 1 piece of 8.
Okay.
Here you go. And here's a complimentary Crazy Straw. We give them to all new customers of the Bloody Lip.
Bartender, give me a drink.
Name your poison.
Mix me up a Blue Whale.
Sorry, blender's not big enough. Oh, but seriously, That'll be 1 piece of 8.
Okay.
There she blows!
Bartender, get me a drink.
Name your poison.
Give me a bloody stump.
I can't. Chainsaw's out of gas.
Hilarious.
Yeah, I cracked myself up. That'll be 1 piece of 8.
Okay.
Here you go.
Nice place you have here. Well, see ya. It says Woody.
That's me. Get your hands away from there. It's not a toy. Yeah?
I'd like to look around a bit.
Sure thing.
That's about the best peg leg I've ever seen.
Thanks. I made it myself.
Nice craftsmanship.
I made it myself. Get your hands away from there. I need all of them.
That doesn't seem to work. That doesn't seem to work.
I'm gonna die, hungry, blind, and alone.
Hi, Wally.
Who's there? I can't see anything without my monocle.
What exactly do you do here?
I'm a cartographer.
You do open heart surgery in here?
No. I'm the map-making sort of cartographer.
Oh. Maps. That's interesting. Well, see ya.
Okie dokie.
Why me?
Yo. Hey guys. Hey guys. Hey. Yoo-hoo. They're sleeping peacefully.
I remember I've got to do the coffin. I remember I had to use these. But I just can't remember how the fuck I got these. Let me check if it's something different.
What do you think you're doing? It's not a toy.
That doesn't seem to work.
That's the same. Alright, this one I'm going to actually have to check the walkthrough and see. Do a Google on it. I'll be back.
I'd like to look around a bit.
Sure thing.
Wait, something about distracting him. Goodbye, South from the shop. Some of my bits, man. We work with vacation shop like that. It doesn't really help. They're broken now as well. Still not making sense. I feel like there's something stopping it. Okay, so let's go check to see if his legs are already being repaired. His legs been repaired, so I missed this cutscene. Small detail that I probably paid to when I was younger. I don't remember clocking this, maybe I did. Yes. This game was made in '91, so you got to think about that.
Someone get a doctor!
I don't want it. I can't. He's lacquered it onto the wall.
Anything else I can pinch?
It's too heavy to move.
Obviously, but...
No thanks. I don't touch other people's stools. No thanks. I don't touch other people's stools. I don't have time to sit. I may be a lazy guy, but carrying around my own place to sit is too much.
Ah, no creativity. Actually...
It's too high. It's too high.
Could have used the stool, but oh well. From memory, I need to go and do the coffin.
Where do you want to go?
Check it out. Sightseeing. See the world.
Well, well, well. I knew you'd come back. My customers always do. Eventually.
I'm looking for a good used coffin.
Amazing! When you first walked in here, I said, now there's a guy who needs a good used coffin. there happens to be an excellent deal right behind you. Let's go take a look-see. Now this here is the Cadillac of coffins. Look at all that leg room. There's room in there for Long John Silver himself. Here, let me get in and show you. Yes, a man can really rest in peace and comfort with one of these. Why should a man's coffin be any smaller than his bunk at sea?
But it's open.
It's just as roomy closed. Here, let me show you. Sure. Try out the lid operation. See? I could spend a lot of time in a coffin like this. Look at how freely I can wiggle my toes. I hear you knocking up there. That's solid oak you're hearing. Yes, it sure is nice in here. Hey, I think the lid's stuck.
It's locked.
Excuse me, friend. Could you see if the clasp is closed on this thing? I seem to be stuck. Hello?
That doesn't seem to work.
Is anybody out there? Yoo-hoo! Help! I can't get out of here! Okay, a joke's a joke. Now get me out of here!
This is a little
Open
freaky
this coffin
listening
right
to this.
now! Anybody? I really am claustrophobic. Someone's going to pay for this. I'd bust out of here, but the dang thing's built.
Clicking outside at times is a
Well,
bad idea.
if I had to be stuck in a coffin, at least it's the deluxe model. Really is pretty roomy in here. Maybe I'll take a nap. I hope this thing's not airtight. I'm not dead! I'm losing valuable business. Let me out! I need to go to the bathroom! Really is pretty roomy in here. I can't get out of here! I hope this thing's not airtight. Someone's going to pay for this! Help! Let me out! I need to go to the bathroom! Really is pretty roomy in here. I hope this thing's not airtight. Hello? I'm losing valuable business. I'd bust out of here, but the dang thing's built too well. I really am claustrophobic. Open this coffin right now!
Fuck it, leave him there for now.
Pretty roomy in here. Are you still out there? Hello?
Check it out. Last day before I leave for Fat Island. Sunken galleons. Glass-bottom boat. Sightseeing. Glass-bottom boat. Check it out.
Thousands will spit. Hundreds will win. No volunteers? If Blackbeard were here, he'd shoot you all right now. Come on, don't be shy. Let it fly. I know you want to volunteer. It's on the tip of your tongue. You think spitting is gross? I'll tell you what's gross. Swallowing that stuff is gross.
Boy, this stuff makes my spit thick.
Prove to me that you guys are at least as fun as a pack of llamas.
Oh, me.
Captain Loogie is in the house. Spit away!
Baby.
Right on! What's this? A surprise turnaround in performance? Looks like second place. I think that deserves a little applause. Now, how about the rest of you? I hear there's some scouts here from the pro spitting circuit. Ooh.
Boy, this stuff makes my spit thick.
This may be your last chance at popularity and success.
Oh, me.
Captain Loogie is in the house. Spit away!
Right on!
Looks like someone stopped practicing. Looks like third place. Now, how about the rest of you? What was that? Did I hear somebody swallow?
Boy, this stuff makes my spit thick. Oh, me!
Captain Loogie is in the house. Spit away!
Right on!
It looks like he's rallying. Looks like second place. I think that deserves a little applause. Now, how about the rest of you? Are you pirates or not? Ugh, it's a great day for spitting. Valuable prizes.
Oh, me!
Captain Loogie is in the house. Spit away!
What are you waiting for? I don't think he's got the lips for it.
I don't think he's got the lips for it.
Oh, and I thought he was gonna go all the way. Looks like third place. Now, how about the rest of you? No volunteers? If Blackbeard were here, he'd shoot you all right now.
Made in Hong Kong.
You think spitting is gross? False alarm. As I was saying, thousands will spit, hundreds will win. Just put your two lips together and blow. It's a great day for spitting.
Boy. This stuff makes my spit thick.
Okay, now, who's gonna be next? Captain Loogie is in the house. Spit away!
I don't think he's got the lips for it. Come on, what are you? Afraid?
It looks like he's rallying. Looks like second place. I think that deserves a little applause. Now, how about the rest of you? Turn a disgusting habit into a prestige-winning skill. Thousands will spit, hundreds will win.
Sure looks enthusiastic about spitting.
Just look at this juicy crowd. Are you pirates or not? Are you pirates or not? False alarm. As I was saying, step up to the line and test your swill.
Boy, this stuff makes my spit thick.
2, 4, 6, 8. Come on, let's expectorate. Step up to the line and test your swill. Captain Loogie is in the house. Spit away!
Come on, what are you? Afraid? Come on, what are you? Afraid?
He's cleared first place! That was truly awe-inspiring. Sports fans, we've seen something incredible here today. Let me congratulate you and give you this fine commemorative plaque. I salute you, Captain Loogie. Come on, let's give him a hand. Of course, there are plenty more prizes for the rest of you. So how about it, gang? Step up to the line and test your swill. It's a great day for spitting. What was that? Did I hear somebody swallow?
Boy, it's a long way down there. That doesn't seem to work. Boy, it's a long way down there.
Where do you want to go?
Can't dig that, Daddy. I don't think I should hammer that.
What the fuck? Monkey wrench, I guess. Yeah, I see the relation. It just used a monkey to turn off of a main vein for mains for a water pump.
Hello, Mr. Monkey. Sir? Oh well. It's a grotesque monkey statue.
Yes? What do you want?
I'm looking for a map.
I knew it.
Look, kid.
I'm sick of you would-be treasure hunters coming over here I just inherited this house 2 months ago, and every single day all I've heard is rap tap tap. Do you have a treasure here? Why can't you people just go away and leave a retired pirate in peace?
I'm Guybrush Threepwood. Prepare to die.
So, you want a sword fight, do you? Sword fighting's for wimps, weenies, and sissies.
Giving up so easily? Wow, this game's a cinch.
I have a better way to solve a dispute. Real pirates solve their differences with a drinking contest.
Drinking contest?
Come on in. I'll get us set up. This is my special grog. It's just for contests. Twice the alcohol, twice the calories. I hate having to waste it. Here's your drink. From what I'm told, nobody can drink the special contest grog without feeling faint. But I've been practicing. You know, most of the treasure hunters just leave when I ask them to. But you're persistent. It'll get you places in life, boy.
That doesn't seem to work.
But it won't get you into my house.
Looks like an awful lot of grog.
Are you sure you don't want to back out?
No, thanks. I'll be fine.
You drink first. Typical.
Oh, my head. I'm too short. Looks like a big hole. I don't think that'll work.
Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go?
It's already in use. I think I get the idea. There are hundreds of them. Even if one were a piece of the map to Big Whoop, I'd never be able to find it. It's hundreds and hundreds of maps. There are hundreds of them. Even if one were a piece of the map to Big Whoop, I'd never be able to find it. It's lovely Booty Island. Mr. Guybrush Threepwood. It's empty. It's empty. I don't know how to play. What a big organ. It's already open. There's nothing interesting in there. Okay, dog. You're coming with me. That doesn't seem to smell interesting to him. I don't think that'll work. That doesn't seem to smell interesting to him. Oh, what a cute little thing. There are hundreds of them. Even if one were a piece of the map to Big Whoop, I'd never be able to find it. seem to smell interesting to him. That doesn't seem to smell interesting to him. That doesn't seem to smell interesting to him. That doesn't seem to smell interesting to him.
I think that's enough for now, people. At least on this game. I'll continue it next time.